Yes, ka-ching, boom. Nailed it. So you've decided to take a Shakespeare course, eh? Well, whether you have a more scientific mind here to pick up a semi-systematic process by which to decode the bard, or an English major here to pick up some tips to just ease your reading experience, you've come to the right place. Well, it's a place. Well, there are an immense number of things that go into the ultimate goal of actually succeeding in a Shakespeare course. In this video, I'll be including what I believe to be the bare minimum, with two more specific goals in mind: survival and frustration avoidance. By survival, I mean understanding the text at its most basic level. The latter, frustration avoidance, stems more from my own personal experiences and is a major factor in the points that I'll be making in this video, because for me, stress, anxiety, frustration, whatever you want to call it, is a paralytic. It makes me less efficient and less able to retain and therefore benefit from information, which I think we can all agree is sort of an important aspect of actually succeeding in school. But I guess this begs the question, what is it about Shakespeare that people find frustrating? What makes them so hard to understand? Well, broadly speaking, I would propose these 3 points: language, format, and narrative complexity. I think now's a good time to tell you that the format of this video is based off of this visual which I have created that I will either link for download in the description down below or leave up a full-size image at the end of the video that will hopefully be easy for you to screen cap and print out for yourself. Okay, back to the video! I'll of course be going into more detail about what I mean by each of these things, but first I'm going to give you 4 pieces of advice that either hopefully you can apply intuitively as to keep this video brief, or for which I'll give you more specific examples later on. First, accept that this is going to take practice, but I can assure you that when entering into any of the many worlds of Shakespeare, there is no friend like familiarity, which, just like with anything else, will come with time. Second, accept that you will not and do not need to understand everything. And here's where the actual going to class part of class becomes especially important, because chances are that class discussion is going to be the best way to gauge a thing's importance. Whether it's for general comprehension or for a specific assignment, chances are if both your professor and fellow classmates fail to bring it up, then that, my friend, is a struggle bus that you can let roll right on by. Third, just keep reading. This point's importance spans every facet of your reading comprehension, culminating in one word: context. While it will certainly be necessary to pause and refer to external resources here and there, the text will usually contain enough recognizable information to clarify itself internally. You know, like Inception, except also not at all. But plus, most modern editions contain definitions or short explications for everything from individual words, phrases, or references to even larger things like setting and stage direction, which actually, now that I think about it, would have made for a much better Inception analogy. Off to my 4th and final point: always use good resources. While sites like SparkNotes, Wikipedia, and even the Google Dictionary feature have their place, and while I certainly understand their mass appeal as quick, accessible, and seemingly comprehensive sources for what seems like everything, the fact is that all of those things directly conflict with the close reading of Shakespeare, as a compatibility level 0. It's like I said, they have their place, and it's not even the validity of their content that I'm questioning, but rather its limitation, a quality with an immense potential to lessen that of your grade. Get it? Quality? Quality? Anybody? Anybody? Okay. Moving on. Now to return to my original 3 points of language, format, and narrative complexity, beginning by breaking down language into 4 more basic components. First, you have the words themselves, which are often confusing not only because they're completely unfamiliar to us, but also because their meanings have evolved over time due to the descriptive nature of our language. Going beyond understanding simply what a word means, it's important to keep an eye out for those that appear repeatedly throughout the text, being sure to note whether its sense is uniform or if its meaning changes from scene to scene, or even when said by different characters. While most editions contain definitions of unfamiliar or evolved words, I would most recommend Folger because of its side-by-side format that allows for minimal interruption while reading. Folger is also my preferred online edition because of its search feature, which enables you to look at the use of a particular word throughout the entirety of the text, making it very, very easy to compare its different senses or analyze its different effects, whether it be how it reflects or enhances a certain scene, or even how the word itself is affected by the setting of the play, whether that be historically or geographically. All of which, I might add, are fantastic ideas for essay topics. But Mandy, from whence might we procure such information as to support such claims that also meets your requirements of a good source? Wow, myself, how surprisingly helpful of you. Well, for this I would recommend the online Oxford English Dictionary, or the OED for short. What the OED does, more than just giving you both modern and historical definitions, is it gives you actual textual references and examples of a word's use at a specific point in time, many of which actually come from Shakespearean text, for many reasons of course, but also because of his propensity for word invention. Yet another reason his language can be very difficult to interpret. Second after the words themselves are the sentences in which they are arranged, and here you'll see a lot of crossover into the realm of format. The primary aspect of Shakespeare's sentences that people find confusing is the fact that they don't always follow the traditional structure of, well, you know, like the English language, but this is usually done on purpose for a particular dramatic effect, whether it's to give a particular character his own voice, or to set the tone or setting of a scene, or to give the universe its own vernacular, or to maintain the poetic structure of a certain, you know, line, or even just for funsies. My point being is that it's not only because of the age of the text, but because of the world that exists inside the text itself. Just like we had with, you know, fictional universes of today. I mean, not the same Yoda would be if normally he spoke. It's also important to keep in mind that unlike what your 8th grade popcorn reading experience of Romeo and Juliet may have taught you, you don't stop at the end of every line, but rather read along with the punctuation as you normally would. For the most part, this is something that you're going to get used to, and probably pretty quickly. There might be a line here or there that you have to translate a little more intentionally in your mind, but that's okay. You should also remember that what you're reading is in fact dialogue. It's meant to be spoken and performed by people who know how to put the right emphasis on the correct words, lines, etc. This leads to the third and most convoluted component of Shakespeare's language, the complication of meaning to achieve an intended effect. In short, wordplay. For this component in particular, it's vital to accept the fact that there are some things you are just never going to understand. But here again, I'm forced to refer to my favorite of the Folger edition, because while it does give an explanation here or there for a double meaning or a reference, it doesn't overload you with footnote after footnote. The fourth and final difficult component of reading Shakespeare's language is that there are some things that are just left out of the script that you have to fill in on your own, especially when it comes to action. Now, some of these things are implied by characters' dialogue, but a lot of them are just completely unspecified, because again, remember, this is a play meant to be performed, but in the meantime, it's okay to fill in those gaps with a bit of imagination. Finally, we are done with language. I am so sorry, I know that was a lot all at once, but I promise you that so much of it bleeds into the other two categories that they're going to be exponentially shorter, bringing us to the second of our 3 main points: format. Other than the aspects of format already discussed in the language section in relation to dialogue is keeping track of who is actually saying that dialogue and who the heck they are in the first place. Well, you can always flip back to the page at the beginning of every text which lists the names and roles of all the characters in the play. Honestly, this is just going to become a constant interruption to your reading, potentially making it more difficult for you to follow along with the overall plot. So here again, I'm going to say go to class. I promise that after reading, going to class, and then reading again, things are going to begin to clarify themselves very, very quickly. See, that wasn't too painful. We're already moving on to our third and final point: narrative complexity. Resources are going to be the most vital component to conquering any confusion in this category, but here again I'm forced to recommend Folger, whose editions include synopsi, I don't know. There's a synopsis at the beginning of every scene, which is very helpful in contextualizing that scene's place in both that particular act and in the play overall. Another very basic but helpful resource for contextualization is Freytag's Pyramid, which basically states that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, stipulating that the most critical action is going to take place in the middle, which in Shakespeare's case is the third act. Again, in the case of context, it's vital for your analysis later on, which you're gonna have to do whether it be for a project or more likely for a paper. Context is so important for both analysis as well as the overall comprehension of the play. I know that this is supposed to be a video about the really basic, you know, components of the basic tips of how to read and just survive Shakespeare, but honestly, Shakespeare is always going to be complicated, even at the most basic level. Thank you so much if you've made it to this point in the video. If you were confused by anything, keep in mind about that visual aid that I'm going to put up at the end, as well as try to link in the description below. I promise you that it will really, really help you understand the format that I chose to basically order this video in. But keep in mind that that's part of the beauty of online video, is if anything was confusing, you can always go back and watch it again. But in any case, I hope that you either found this helpful if you are in a Shakespeare course, or maybe it convinced you to take a Shakespeare course. I hope it didn't scare you away from taking one, certainly, because it is a great kind of class to take, I can promise you. You get to watch a lot of Kenneth Branagh in all his Kenneth Branagh glory. And because honestly, I loved the class that I took. I'm not just saying that because this is a school project, but I genuinely did. And now I get to, you know, bring that enjoyment to this format and, you know, potentially enable some Shakespeare nerds to unite, because, come on, that's what the internet's for, right? Explications. Explications. Supercalifragilisticexplicalidations. No, you know what? I'm just gonna go with my first take.